You guys, how's it going? It is. It is me here. Where do I want to? Okay, I'll sit up in the corner there. Yes, April 10th, 2018. Guess I can minimize that. Get out of here. I think I'm up in the corner somewhere. Never know where I am, but oh, maybe that's why I wanted to do that. Okay, that's why. Okay. Okay. What? Pin it to the software. I want to see this stuff. Okay. Oh, it's still down there. There we go. Sorry, guys. Ooh, that's really goofy. Uh, that's actually. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to set this up here, and I don't like it. So, why it's spread out like it did. Okay. Oh, Jesus, don't do that again. I'm trying, guys. Okay. Sorry about that. I have to see. I just basically I want to make sure I was in the frame. I'm talking all over the place. So, this is the day after the big 6-hour session I had with Ski Lab. And yeah, it was on my mind all day today. That's a good thing. That's actually a really good thing. It's not in a bad way. Not at all. Um, Momentum is clearly towards LA at the moment. I haven't seen. I mean, I have a session for Mojave tomorrow night, which I'm gonna do as ongoing because I'm not ready to host LA or prepared to do anything for LA just yet. But I'm getting there. I'm gonna open up the simulator for a minute, and all it's to do is to get the screen. I want to show you the dispatch screen so that I can basically explain what it is that I'm talking about. I don't care. I just do an extra board. It doesn't. There. As long as it's over there, and then we'll figure out. Okay. So, did I get all over there? Good enough for me. More. So what are we at? Oh yeah, it's April 10th, 2018, just past 9 o'clock. If I hadn't said so already. So, this is what we have been running up to this point. I mean, the big question, at least that I have to keep on asking myself, is why every time I want to launch something, with the exception of the RTS California server, which ran for a few years, 24, eventually 24/7. Eventually, I handed it off, tried to get somebody else to take it over because I wanted to. I think at my first intentions was to devote my time towards RTS. I had some other aspirations. Then I really had interest in pursuing Florida. I think that was not Florida, Selkirk. Selkirk was the way I wanted to go because there wasn't much of an influence going on in Selkirk, and so I gave it a shot, and it it just didn't appeal to me after running it for a while. the beauty brought me there, but I just, like I said, running it has nothing to do with the quality of the route or the way it was. It's one of those routes that just, after you've run it a few times at speed, and there's really, it's very efficient, extremely efficient, and it's what I would call under capacity for most part. Hard to believe that there was once 4 lines on it, but anyway. This is the Mojave sub. What ended up happening, just for those of you who didn't know the history, which dates back, years or whatever. I've been in day one, run 8. So I had a RTS for a few years. The server eventually 24/7 has passed down. Got a split. I had 2 servers. I had a Florida server they're all owned independently. They still exist today. They're Southwest, and there's a Southeast server doing their thing. Actually, I think this, obviously it doesn't benefit the Southeast server any, but the Southwest server should be benefiting from this, because it actually um, it makes it spreads out. Anytime there's an expansion, it spreads things out, but then again, it plays into the switching side of things if they like pausing the clock, which was actually an idea of mine originally, and I took a lot of flack for it because Mike went along with it, and being a 24/7 server, a lot of people didn't get to run when they wanted to run, and so goes version 2. You either have to have full capacity running trains, or you're just on yourself running whenever you want, and in anarchy mode, as if it was version 1. Version 2 changed a lot of things, both good and it has its pros and cons, just like switching a route does. So what else went on? I switched back over. I started looking at Florida right around the time where I was talking to the host with the Southeast server, and former California, Florida server, I guess, Southeast server, and they were hoping to find a way that we could all figure out something together. I think that was the way it was put, which I concurred. So I gave my idea, but eventually it more into their best interest to move on to a different platform. So they did basically the same thing that the Southwest server did. I think I've been on the Southwest server a few times. I thought I went on to the Southeast server once, but not much was happening. Believe it or not, despite the fact RTS is very based on car forwarding, I'm not one who just likes to switch all the time. And I'm not saying that that's what the Southeast server does, but it's very based in switching. So it's a complete system that continues to run, and they've done a great job, especially with what was the old RTS car forwarding software, and just kept on going with it. Of course, it's not compatible with version 2, but they've been able to do what they can with it. I don't know if they're still using that software to generate switch lists and all that other stuff. I don't think. So yeah, I looked at Florida as an opportunity with Waycross coming, and the fact that I was no longer really aligned. I thought, well, I might as well just run my own server, or maybe it was even before then. I don't know what happened, but I decided to give it a try and not do a 24/7, but to run a sessions, just like I did with. Or wait a minute, did I do No, I did Bakersfield Project at some point in there too. So I think Bakersfield Project was the first one. Now that I think back on it, Florida, then Bakersfield. Sounds like I did Florida, then Bakersfield, and I went to, sorry, went to Northeast, back Bakersfield, then I did Florida, was the last one I did before um, I took a hiatus for a few months. Couldn't find myself, couldn't find the momentum. And I came back to this screen that you're looking at right here, the Mojave sub, and I looked at it and I was just like, I relaxing. I do enjoy running it. I love the single track main lines. The traffic density is not too high, but just enough to keep things interesting. In fact, we've had some pretty good traffic on some of the meets. There's been some really fun sessions the last little bit. So I enjoy these sessions. It's not. I'm not going away from this if I do go away from Mojave. I'm not doing it just because um, there's something about Mojave that's just not appealing. It has nothing to do with it. It's just I found something better. Really, what the bottom line down to. So, what what changed this from the Bakersfield project? The Bakersfield project was based out of Bakersfield and comprised of all the industries in this area. And it was a lot. And back then, I think I had a bit more of a base as I do now, but still, it was more focused on switching, I think, but trying to run trains and get trains to run and do their thing and everything. It was tough because the way the industries were set up, I still had Mojave Industries, I still had other industries, and it was just pulling all these cars into here, and it wasn't really filtering. Filter had not been put in yet, so that update had not taken place, which really limited me on what I could do. Whereas by the time I came around to Mojave, filters were now had been part of Run8 for probably a couple of months. I think I forget when that update came out. It came out late last year, but late last year or early this year, I can't remember. It was one of the I think it was not the last update, but the one before that. Um, but the fact that the filters were in now meant that I could bring a switcher called the Mojave Flyer, run it out of Highland, spawn it out of Highland, and then bring it down and to Mojave, and that's all the industries I worried about. And the rest was just running the main line. And it was that simple. The goal has always been, actually it's been that way since I believe I started establishing this goal in lieu of what I saw happening uh, with my project for Waycross. What I found was happening was, despite the fact that I had intentions of building a base, I was feeling as though as I was going to be trapped. And I didn't like that feeling. I kind of felt that way actually in the Northeast too. I felt like there was always one person who wanted to do this, and I felt like I was dispatching all the time, and it was boring. Um, which is okay. Um, dispatching, just stuck at dispatching is one thing, but being able to dispatch and do other things then isn't so bad. And that's where I think LA comes into play, because it's similar to it, but there's so much other possibilities of multitasking and just trying to relax and um, enjoy railroads. The way I look at it, enjoy a system before your eyes. Mojave's pretty cool. Like I said, single track main lines, running the trains, having everything. I think I have the status. I do. Turn that off before it starts spawning. But so I mean, the single track, like I said, the single track mainlining is great, but it requires some attention. We used some of the more recent sessions. We've been using external dispatcher. if I'm dispatching tomorrow night. I haven't seen what the latest look here. Let's see here. So if I go to Run8 servers and check the session for tomorrow, yeah, it don't look that good. Manage sessions. That don't look good at all. If it's just me, that's interesting. But that might be one of those nights where I decide to could potentially and just work on things. Well, we're 24 hours away. Oh yeah, I was gonna put the I'm forgetting I got chat window. Here, let me get my chat. Going on there. Right now. Okay, I got that. Perfect. All right. Works. So yeah, I may go ahead and cancel tomorrow's session. Quite honest. Not it has nothing to. Honestly, it has nothing to do. It just has to do with where my mindset is. I'd run it, but just for the sake of dispatching and getting some trains around, or finishing up the switching job. Um, in fact, let me go ahead and cancel that. Had I seen people that were already signed up, I would have gone for it. But at this point, I don't see the point, if that makes sense. So let me go ahead and cancel that right now. Why can't I get? Oh my God! I'm trying to open up another window. Okay, now that's all right. So I think I've seen anything else. All right. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead just really quickly here in the news and announcements. Oh, that's weird when it does that. What do you mean Run8 servers is behind? Can't even get in there. Just give me a second. 14th. What am I doing? October 14th. Losing my brain. That's weird. There we go. So yeah, I'm just gonna give myself one day. I'm not doing it because of lack of people. I'm doing it just because I think it's more beneficial for me to um, take as much time as I can. Um, ah, crap! I did. Okay. Just give me a minute, guys. I apologize. Just trying to get. Oh, this thing is goofy. Guess it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. Okay. I haven't put the Sunday session in there just yet, but it'll be there at some point, just a little bit later on. So anyways, let me get back to. Yeah, that's a good way to look. Okay, so a few things now. Going back on the train of thought, and I apologize for the delay there. I just wanted to. I was a little surprised. Just I thought I'd have a couple people in there, so that's why I didn't want to. I know I'm letting Quincy wanted to run and all that, but I hadn't seen much otherwise in the late post. I know Quincy was in conversation with me. Ski's been in conversation with me. Um, there's others who have been participating in those sessions that really haven't been saying much of anything, so I don't know what's going on with it. Um, I've been trying to get people to participate in the forums if possible, so I'm glad you guys are. But just trying to get some type of lay. I get more information when I'm in a chat. I find um, than anything, which is kind of weird. Forums don't work as well, and I don't normally use this particular chat at all, because usually my screens are too full, and it won't be happening when I'm doing LA or even developing LA. Not going to happen. So figure for a night like 9:22. Let's keep rolling here. So what's happening is, well, first of all, let me go back to the Mojave sub, explain where the connections towards LA goes. The way it was running, in order to get a train spawn on the BNSF section on the prototypical line, I had to fake a train out of Yermo because that's the nearest spawn point. So when you look at the reason why that's so far away, the reason why there's one at Highland and the reason why there's one at Vincent is on version 2, the default packages are Mojave, the center Barstow, and needles. That's automatically given to you in version 2. Back in version 1, you used to have needles. Cajon is an add-on product. LA is an add-on product. Seligman is as well as. So what happens in that case is the assumption, instead of putting more spawn points, I guess, I don't know if they're harder, easier, is to basically go ahead and have a spawn point at the edge of whatever territory it is to basically maximize the territory. So in that case, you have to go all the way. If you're actually going to stay prototypical, you have to either go all the way to Needles, spawn there. That's the earliest point you can have. If you had Seligman, you can spawn from there. Or you have to go back into Barstow and spawn at Lenwood. That's the only way you can get onto BNSF other than running from train from Mojave if you're going to be using the spawn points. There's no spawn points even in the departure yards here. Oh, there they are, down there. Whereas at least LA, they do have a couple spawn points there. So in some places they'll put spawn points in the yards. I've seen some of the other routes do it as well, which is kind of helpful, especially for if you don't have time to deal with a yard, or if you don't have the manpower, etc. It's always helpful. So going back to Cajon for a minute, or Mojave. So the two links is Cajon sub links. Although one is Cajon sub, as you can see, the other isn't linked to anything. So this here, if this ever became part of it, this would have to become the BNSF line because it's useless otherwise. You can run trains off of it and they just disappear. Anything that's going into LA would then have to go all the way around. Then you'd have to join into Cajon sub here, which, as you can see, there's a San Bernardino sub button now. Once you install San Bernardino, you get that. So now you've got the San Bernardino section there, which also applies to this as well. So the UP Alhambra sub, same thing. It comes into the San Bernardino here, and that's where you get the link that comes up. So for those of you that didn't see it, it was pretty cool. Ski and I had a blast. You know, Ski had as well. I haven't looked at the industry files. I could look at them, but I'm not worried about it because tomorrow, as opposed to running a session, I'm going to look a little deeper to getting the industry files and getting some trains, and just the whole idea is for me to do it single player. I want to be able to see how much I can push into it, how much I can do on my own, because one thing that I did with Mojave is I made it basically I made it basically a goal of mine that and yeah, and Sunday we will run it. I just have a little bit more preparation to make. Things have changed as far as my weekend plans. All of a sudden, I do have my son. What that actually, from what our conversation was this evening, isn't going to impact things because he's prepared to run with me and test it, which basically means me in single player and him watching or setting up. But I want to do the final tweaking tomorrow ahead of that. That way, him and I can run it single player, get an idea of really how the balance is going to be, and go from there. So the goal for me at this point, Ski runs it a little bit differently, but what he's got set up is just as fun, and he runs he I believe he uses the spawn points as well as Barstow. I think he uses all of the routes, frankly. It looked like the whole dispatch board was lit up last night, almost 80 trains. Yeah, he had 77 trains running at one time, and I wasn't doing much dispatching. Most of it was fleeting. I prefer to just stick with what we got. Use the spawn points, because what happens is when you fleet them, the traffic tends to congest a little bit. In pockets, it usually will follow the slow poke. Then a lot of the traffic, especially because it's very difficult to watch the whole board and try to switch and do everything. So the emphasis on this and the focus for the route, from what I can tell from the developers, has always been focused on BNSF. I think this has always been their focus. When you look at UP, if you think about the history of Run8, and you look back to how long it took them to do the cutoff, for example, Palmdale cutoff, that wasn't something for 5 years. It took us 5 years before we saw it. There was rumors of it coming, but then there was rumors that maybe it wasn't happening, and then sure enough, there was the Palmdale cutoff. So we got that, but the emphasis has always been on BNSF. Even there was a time where SJVR really wasn't represented. There was really much of anything back in the beginning when you had Bakersfield. But BNSF has always had strong showing. Everything, including Barstow as its centerpiece, and the needles and everything like that. So it's really been focused on BNSF, where UP is a feeder, or just basically because it's part of the traffic pattern. Now, I understand what this is all about here. This little dashed area. I didn't understand it when I first laid eyes on this pattern. The first time I saw this dispatch screen, I thought it just meant that it was carrying over. But you can see it's different. It's a dashed line, so it's not a continuation. It's actually a separation, and that is because of the various rewrites and reworks that they had to do. As even mentioned by John in the release notes, both the LA sub and the Alhambra sub is basically run directional. Let me just see here. Read that. Oh, okay. I thought you had Mojave sub going. That's fine. And yeah. So I believe I had spawn points inside Hobart. I've decided I'm getting rid of those. After last night, that's too much fun to toss up. In fact, the crazy thing was my son didn't see the live stream from last night, but he said at one point he told me, he says, "Why don't you run Hobart?" So he had the idea that he wanted to run in Hobart, and maybe I just brushed it off, or I didn't think of it, or I thought it was too much. I've always looked at Hobart when I first saw it, and I thought to myself, man, that's got to be a mess to run. The difference between Hobart and San Bernardino is, one, you don't have the goofy grade. Two, you don't have that cutoff bridge in the middle. Yeah, yes, you can bring trains in and pretend that the containers somehow fit under the bridge, or the container cranes fit under the bridge, but they don't, or you know, up to it or whatever. But San Bernardino is not anything like Hobart. Hobart is much more functional. It is much easier, even with some of the longer trains, and we were getting close to 9,000 foot trains. In fact, we sent out, I think, a 9,300 foot train last. But Hobart is actually very functional, full full-fledged trains, and even maybe two moves, one cut, and then back it into something else or whatever. There's also a lot of double track sections that are not following grade crossings that I discovered yesterday. I'm going to try to get myself a list so that I can, when dispatching, and dispatching this is not like the Mojave sub. It is easier in some ways, but in some ways you have to really know the territory. So it tends to be easier than single track, but at the same time you have to be watching what you're doing, and understand what's, you know, basically what's going on in the symbols and all the other stuff, because this can really complicate and mess you up in a hurry. So getting back to what John had set up, he's got this whole, um, what he did was basically because of the, I guess it was what, the graphics or something to do with the way they were rewriting it, and stuff was underground, and the duplicity, and then they started doing, you know, they added double track and stuff like that. This was an afterthought. And I said this before. It was an afterthought. I do not think they originally planned on it. In fact, I think the only one that was originally in there, you can see how it's squeezed in. The original plan was to use this, but they decided to go with connection to Cajon, instead of doing that, which kind of gave West Colton a use. Um, so that was, but yeah, it's Mojave's. You know, I liked Mojave too, and actually blame it on Mike. Ski's fault. He bought me this. I wasn't going for LA. I was going to stick with, and believe me, I have no regrets whatsoever. I could have declined it. I could have said, "Nah, that's okay. Somebody else, or give it to, you know, a friend of a model railroad." But I was like, no. I was like, yeah, I'll go for it. I just wasn't ready for it. But then once I got into it, I was just, okay, this has potential now. And yeah, it's, you know, at first I thought of it as just, I always wanted it. Seligman sub I could care less about. I don't want Seligman sub. In fact, if they do if they do Long Beach or whatever the hell they're talking about doing, here's the thing, and if I understand, maybe Ski can try to explain this one to me. If I'm not mistaken, West Taylor, if you go further west, that is where the line comes in to Soledad Canyon. So they didn't include that. Had they included it, and this is the thing, this is where it's more centric to BNSF and it comes out of the scope. it's like an addictive drug. Now, there's a lot of addictions. One of those things. But, so Soledad Canyon comes in on the west-hand side and feeds into East LA Yard and also feeds into coming down through the corridor here. Yeah, that's correct. Good. Okay, so I understood that correctly. By not doing that, you're basically, if you were to connect Mojave, you're actually using a line which they've increased the capacity, but you're now essentially you're using, not only are you losing your double capacity that you had, but you're now, this is becoming a double track main line, single track main railroad, which really can get nuts for a dispatcher. And this area is already complicated enough as it is, just the San Bernardino sub alone. Yeah, to connect to Vincent, that's right. So, not to mention the Cajon sub and everything else. And if you want to go to so far as to do BNSF out of Yermo, if you do it that way, personally, I would, if I was to put a spawn point, and then, you know, I would almost, I don't know. I was thinking the other day, I was thinking, you know, I could probably put a spawn point for, if I was to really want to do UP directional or bidirectional, I could always put a spawn point on the Yuma sub because it's double track, and then I can run it that way. But then you're getting into that area up by West Colton, which really ties into it. I'm not a big fan of even worrying about UP at this point. The only place I can think of that has any bearing or interest for me for UP right now would be possibly coming out of the corridor, interacting. I mean, yeah, you got this, but there's so many industries along here that personally I don't think it's going to be a big deal that not everything's run. I mean, yeah, there's some really cool interlockings and all that stuff, but I'm not too concerned about UP at this point. Anybody can basically, if they're looking for a through train, can take a train either on the line or running out of the corridor. It's all left-hand running for the most part. Run it right through. They'll get signal indications, and the deletion point is where the left-hand running crosses on the Cajon sub. Those that don't have the Cajon sub, which is kind of weird. I think everybody has a Cajon sub if they get this, but I'm not positive. They don't need to. But if they did, then what would happen is the train would go down towards Yermo, but it goes through into the yard and down to the a little street, which is a dead-end track, deletes. Deletion points are also available San Diego sections. I do have spawn points set up for here. I think I have the Dago set up for here. Whatever spawn points I think I had in my RTS data from prior, or the TD3 data, I've included. But other than that, I've also included the BNSF data. I haven't gone through the UP data, and I'm not too worried about it. I want to get a balance. I think my primary goal tomorrow is to run this territory, try out, basically try out Hobart and see how well I can turn around trains, because if I can use the same frequency, there was a couple numbers that were flying around last night that I started doing some calculations on, and I should I don't know if I can still do this. Not. Yeah, I can. Let me blah. Yes. Let me go into here for a second. Yeah, I'll go full screen. want to go into my data or see what I did filter down. And this was stuff I was working with my son last weekend. Yeah. All right. If this was coming out of needles. Oh, it's spawning. Yeah. Okay. So this was, I don't have the frequencies. Maybe I should look at the frequency. These aren't all dailies, but this is the trains that are coming out of, some of these are not dailies, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's pretty damn good, actually. If I can keep it at or around 21 or below, and I'm trying to get the scheduling set up so that the timing averages so that it doesn't overwhelm it. The Long Beach area has 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Almost a 50-50, actually. Long Beach has 19, whereas Hobart has the others. I have A3. I do not have the other ones in there. Of course, I have San Diego, and this is the ones coming out. Probably have to go to Cajon Sub to find, and this was the one that I was working on with my son. I don't know if I finished it or not. Yeah, I was working on it because it included some of the UP symbols. So Hobart has more symbols coming out, which really is irrelevant because considering the experience last night, I'll make whatever symbols I have to. Here's your Memphis train from. So I got 25 symbols. Bare table trains are, I don't know how the hell they're gonna work based on, they don't unload, they just load. So Long Beach has 7, 18, 24. So what you're looking at, I would say, if my calculations are correct, you're looking at a train spawning into the system every 20 minutes on average. So you're having, yeah, well, about every 20 minutes on average, but you're also building a train once an hour out of Hobart on average. If you're just counting BNSF, one Amtrak. If you go further than that, I get Pico Rivera. I'm not worried about, that's not even correct, apparently. Not Pico Rivera, it's something else. That's nothing. I thought it was Pico. Pico Rivera doesn't have a yard like that. A couple San Diego trains. So that's already in the system. I believe the symbols are already there. I did not add the UP yet. So yeah, there's a lot to start off, which I think's a good base. And the reason why I came with that 20. First of all, I had something verified with me on the forum today. One of the posts that I did get, I don't know if it was a post or a YouTube. I'm pretty sure it was a post on the forum. Verified to me that it takes about 5 to 6 hours to unload and load a train regularly for those container yards. So that kind of validates the 5-hour mark. I'm happy with it. That's including inspection and all the other stuff. Set outs of bad cars and all that other stuff would make it up to 6, but since there's no trigger, I'm not worried about it. I'm good with 5 hours. But the reason why I was doing a quick calculation of the amount of length that the yards had, and I came to the conclusion that it was about approximately 20 to 24 is about the maximum capacity you could have loading at one time, uh, without basically falling behind. So if the system does throw trains, which it could, because after all, we're talking about the bingo ball random number thingy, the jig, and it starts pulling a bunch of Hobarts as opposed to sending stuff out of sending in stuff in or out of Long Beach or whatever, decides to throw me a bunch of Hobarts, then I'll have to deal with them. The good part is there are contingency plans to do it and to basically catch up. Um, Now I encourage people to try Hobart. I'm gonna try it tomorrow. So if you guys didn't see last night, or then tomorrow I'm looking forward to just trying some single player testing on Hobart and seeing how it does, how it plays out. I'm just going to deal with myself. I'm not going to worry about anything else. I'm just going to concentrate on playing with the data and everything like that. Sunday I will go live, and it'll be pretty much the same thing, except I will have hopefully it'll have everything posted. I'll pretty much know that I want to run. Industries, I'm not too worried about it. Hobart's a good place to start. Um, if I happen to get the manifest figured out by then, Ski's got information, but like I said, it's buried in an email that he sent me, and I gotta find that email because I never had the attachment. I don't think there was. I don't know if there was attachments or they were right in the body, but or something. But he's got a lot of information on the industries, so um, you know, can feed off of me what my work is happening with Hobart, and because I'm gonna push Hobart to the limit. I'm just gonna run the hell out of that thing, and I don't want to fall into the whole trap that I kind of felt with. I felt that I put myself in Waycross, and I love Waycross. I can't say enough good things about Waycross. Waycross is absolutely the best simulated yard there is in Run8. The problem with Waycross is it takes work. You have to work that yard. Just I wish there was an AI humping or something where you can just let the thing go and it goes at 2 miles an hour, and it you're going up a hill, down a hill, whatever, and it knows to stop by the time it gets to the end, and knows to stop if the bowl decides to get filled up too quick. Well, actually, you can prevent that ahead of time with proper planning. But at least some type of form of it. But it takes a lot of work because not just the hump, but then you have to do the trims. There's a lot of work involved with the hump. It's very difficult for one person can do it, but it takes a lot of work. Wow. I haven't shut up all night though. Barking before I was on. They were barking when my son was. But so yeah. Anyways, I didn't. I was afraid to get stuck into Hobart. Hobart is actually not that hard of a position. In fact, if I was dispatching, I could even yardmaster and help direct somebody if they're interested. For those who like switching, I can direct them to it. Basically, what set off and at what tracks according to the stuff like that. I think actually Ski and I were working that way last night. He was helping me, and I was kind of taking control of Hobart, and then he would tell me what tracks he was running on and whatever. And yeah, he was able to move some power where basically I was actually behind the eight ball when I started. There was all kinds of cars all over the damn place in there. Oh my god. there was stuff that needed to go into the ramps, and there was a whole whack of trains that were set to go to Los Angeles. It was nuts. There was like, I think there was like 12 trains. We ran for 6 hours. There was, I don't think we ever got to that many, but there was literally 12 trains waiting to get into that yard. I think at some point a few got in, 6 were holding, and then there was more coming that could have kept going, and it was absolutely crazy. Um, but you know, I'm not too sure what his settings were at, and then of course that it's all learning curve anyways. And that's the one thing with schedules, especially intermodals. Intermodals, yeah, they do fall behind and all that other stuff, but intermodals um, they tend to stick pretty good to the schedules, for the most part, because they have to have the trucks there at a certain time and everything. So they're like passengers, although passengers can be behind and all that stuff too. So, um, but yeah, I'm not a big switching person myself either, to be honest. Um, I do like dispatching. When I'm hosting, I kind of have to, especially the way I have it set up with um and I do it this way mainly by default. I see people who come on, I just make sure I know who, I kind of know who they are, or I'm like, okay, I put a mental note if it's somebody I don't know. I give them access right away, and then maybe I'll see what they're up to. um I'm not sure who they are or whatever, but then um generally it works pretty good that way. But when I'm hosting, it's difficult for me to necessarily, and I've done it a few times where I can just get in the train and not worry about it. Um, but it's like I'll dispatch, or I will run some locals or do whatever if somebody's dispatching. LA is going to be one of those, like I said, it's going to be one of those things. It looks that complicated. The complex um, part of LA isn't necessarily this. This is kind of set forward unless you start getting into UP, which eventually I might. Where it gets interesting is, well, there's a few areas where it gets interesting. It gets interesting here when the Amtraks come out, and it gets interesting here when you have the inbound and outbound. Not this so much. That's more for locals, but you're basically set up left hand. I keep the left hand running going, and Ski concurred with me. That was the best way to do it, because what happens is, if you recall, on the Cajon sub they cross over, so they're already running left hand running anyways. The other thing is anything coming out of San Diego is already left hand running based on the spawn. So even the San Diegan passenger train that come down, um, they'll hit this station, and then I'll bring them down this track, so that any spawns that come down here hit this station and then go up. So it's left hand running. Then at either Santa Fe Springs or further down, depending upon where the traffic is. Usually I like to cross them in at Santa Fe Springs, bring them down Main 1 if they're headed into Hobart. There's places that you can hold them along here. Other places you can't because of crossings. I forget how it is. I totally forget from last night. I think here you can hold. There's places over here where you can hold no problem. There's a really good area right here I found out late last night. You can also hold them between Fullerton Junction and Basta. Basically, they'd be left-hand running, so they would be on they wouldn't be on the platform track. So that works pretty good. But that's really it. And once the Amtraks come out, that makes it interesting because they come up on 3. So now they're opposed to left-hand running. You've already got trains crossing Ski had this set up, and it was the same setup I like using, is where these switches are reversed so that your left hand running continues this way onto 2, go into the corridor, and the right hand running comes in, it's down this way, so going that way down 2. So you're basically on one here, and then now it's 4 tracks crossing over to 2 where it's 3. What happens is when the Amtraks come out, they'll come out of here, cross over here, get into this track, and then they'll come down 3. Right away now you're basically having to. I'm not too sure where the fastest speeds are, but I would imagine the best place to cross them would be the first one at Hobart Tower. I think you can cross them somewhere in here exactly. I'm not sure. You'd have to take away that switch, cross them over here. But it gets interesting with the Amtraks, because the Amtraks were giving me a big fit, and as morning came, Ski all of a sudden surprised me and started spawning passenger train after passenger train every 30 minutes. I didn't know what was going on, because I'm expecting the random bingo ball thing, and then they were southbound surf line comes. Oh yeah. Hmm. That's interesting that they would do that. I originally would have done that myself. It makes sense because it's off. I guess it's off the line, so. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Coming down here, I can see it turning into right-hand running. Honestly, I can see that easily turning into right-hand running, and then you just go this way and then cross over that way. If you're still, were you left-hand running most of the way? Do you recall, or do you? I'm wondering. Yeah, well, I actually have. There's. I got a few ideas regarding passenger trains. Um, my initial thought, and I probably might play around with this tomorrow, especially if I lull. If I start lulling in Hulbert, I'm actually going to simulate it tomorrow. But if I lull in Hulbert, what will happen? And I'm not going to host it tomorrow. I'm just going to let it. I just want to, because there's too much stuff that I have to add in the background, and I don't want to hold up anybody or whatever. Let take it as a night off, and then um, basically I'm not gonna have the camera on or anything. I'm gonna go ahead and start running, as well as adding and tweaking and whatever. There's a few ways I look at it, because and I was going on this briefly, the intermodal time. The intermodals tend to be at certain times, so the fact of the lack of a scheduling system, and this kind of plays into the passengers too. The fact that there is a lack of a scheduling system really plays into platform usage, as well as cutoff times. Comes to the trucks, when they have to be there, when they have to, how far, basically when they're cut off as far as getting their containers off or their trailers off, and that's it. Then the train is scheduled to leave. They don't always leave on time, but they're usually pretty good. Uh, so, San Bernardino to Riverside. So you crossed to right hand running at Riverside? Is that how it went? That would make I think that would make somewhat sense. I was thinking of that myself, just crossing it over at Riverside, and I know Run8V2 had a discussion about that too, if I recall, because that whole thing, I guess it's an SP thing they used to do. Something. I don't know what the hell that has anything to do. I still don't understand what the hell that crossover is in, but it doesn't the natural crossover at Frost. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe just because you're the passenger and you're overtaking. Possible. And they get out of your way and get out of the way and basically, yeah, because you got the passengers. Oh yeah, you got the Riverside passengers. I'm just looking at it. I was like, oh, I forgot there's an. I haven't run a passenger train up that way yet, but I have 3 and 4 definitely in the. But yeah, getting back to the schedules and that. This is where things play in. I haven't checked the industry turnovers. Maybe Ski knows more about this. I got a funny feeling they're set for 24 hours. At least they were in Mojave. And having the industry set at 24 means you're not going to be able to run daily. As though you think 24 hours, well yeah, well that's daily, right? But no, it isn't. You got to schedule it for like 18, because even if you start running late, like I had in Mojave, what ends up happening is your cars aren't going to be ready for you by the time you get out there, even if you're on time, um, because you were late the day prior. And when you're running 24 hours, even if you go at the same time, your cars are not going to be ready till exactly 24 hours. So, uh, I haven't checked the industries yet to see. Now, for our purposes, it really doesn't matter because I'm not expecting to run dailies on anything. Uh, with the exception of making sure that Hobart has inbounds and outbounds and that I can get things turned around and power. I don't even know if the service bays work. I know there's probably manual switching, manual servicing, but I wondered. Uh, oh, speaking of that AI too, Ski, you had mentioned AI last night. I'm almost certain I recall now, and if the AI does run out of fuel, it keeps going. Just like the AI, if it's underpowered going up a hill, it keeps going at a minimum speed. It doesn't care. I don't even know if I guess it uses fuel. Not sure. It's that's okay. Cool. But but speaking of schedules, and of course the passenger schedules, they're not always on time either, including the departing trains. It's very realistic for an LA train originating to be late, just based on the fact that equipment incoming often comes from if a late. This happened to me on the Canadian. We left very late. In fact, I had an email notice a day before because the Canadian heading eastbound from Western Canada due to the forest fires out west was getting delayed, that there was going to be delays for departure. I think we left at 3 o'clock in the morning or some crazy thing like that. It's strange. And or something. I forget how it went. Maybe it wasn't 3 o'clock in the morning. So maybe it wasn't that bad, but um, that was all because the equipment wasn't serviced Mimico and came back. Um, so The scheduling is interesting because I had an idea today, and like I said, I was thinking about this a lot. At any chance I had, this is definitely we're into LA fever now for sure. And so far, with the exception of Quincy mentioning about Mojave, and I have reservations about leaving Mojave too. I hate starting something and then having to stop it. The other way around was okay, I do it one night this and one night the other. It's a pain in the ass to do it that way because then you have to change your industry file all the time and copy it over and paste it. Um, no, not the industry file, the traffic file. You have to keep copying and pasting your traffic file. Just a pain. Um, I still have to copy my traffic file back in. Obviously, but no, it's just really a pain to do it that way. I would have done it if there was more solid evidence that people were going to miss it. I don't see any evidence that anybody was beginner users or something like that. Um, there's a steep price for LA at I think at $50, which is more than 50 or no, and the burnout thing. Even Ski was worried about me last night being burnt out. Um, no, the burnout had a lot to do with um, yeah, the burnout had a lot to do with me taking on too much, but it also me taking on stuff that I felt as though I wasn't doing it enough for me. So this time around, I look at it I'm not afraid to AI a train. Just let it go if I don't feel like running. I'm not afraid to let others people switch if I don't feel like switching. The beautiful thing about Hobart, if I have it set up the way I think things are going to go, Hobart is not that difficult. You have to keep on top of it, but it's not that difficult to do that as well as dispatch, as well as just enjoy the line. The only thing that I would probably miss if traffic doesn't pick up, and I'm not talking about train traffic. I'm talking about not worried about people traffic. It's, how many people are on or whatever, it doesn't really matter. The only reason why I canceled tomorrow was I hadn't seen vacation and really want to get at this. Um, Now last night we had a backup, Obert, which made some interesting meets, various locations. We had quite a few. That was because I was tying trains down well back on various holdouts because these holdouts here got backed up eventually, and I didn't want to put them blocking crossings, so I started having them down here. I had them up here, which was creating some interesting meets for some of the traffic. So those things do happen, but one thing that's notorious is single tracks are more interesting to double tracks typically, and I'm aware of that. However, I think LA is more interesting to run, perhaps. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that one. I think LA is more interesting. It's a different dynamic, it's a different feel. It's not the desert. There's some really nice scenic areas. I was noticing actually that whole area around between Prado and Mays, kind of nice. Even Arlington to Mays, pretty scenic. So there's a lot of sections. The whole line will not be available. The UP section, I'm not too worried about the Alhambra sub. I'm not even worried about the LA sub or any of the UP for that matter at first until I get a really good number one, I'm not a, and that's where I'm going to expand. If I'm going to expand anywhere in this, the first thing will be is to start integrating UP more. But as far as an industrial side of things, um, there, there will be plenty of industries, as he's well aware of. LA Junction, there's the industries at I can't remember places. La Mirada, one spot. I can't remember. I'm trying to see if I can find it. I think it's on the Los Nidos DT. Well, that's UP too, so maybe not. There is some UP sections that could make other things interesting. Um, I mean, there's a lot of. If I had demand for switching, I would actually be inclined to at least open things up for switching between sessions and do what I kind of did in the Southwest 24/7 servers, where we have the clock paused and you go ahead and start switching because you really don't interact with. This is ideal actually for that setup. This is one of those lines where a lot of it really has no influence on the main lines. There's plenty of places outside of the mains that you can run, provided you have an ample supply of cars. I mentioned that to my son. He seems interested in that. Well, he also seems interested in running impromptu or scheduled sessions on the weekends, so there may be more sessions. As long as he's into it, I'm okay with doing it. So there's the more you can do, the more possibility that others might get into it. If my son is really into it, if he's not, it's not a big deal. But if he is into it, then, and of course we got spring coming up, the weather hasn't been cooperating just yet, but um, the more that he is into it, regardless, that usually will inspire me to keep going because then I won't feel um, burnt out like he's burnout thing. Nah, it's not there. I don't feel burnt out if it's 11 o'clock at night and I don't want to go to bed, then because I'm having fun, there's no way I'm near. It'd be burnout if, man, I really don't want to run tonight. And I had that feeling for a long time back in the end of last. For him, he's very, it's crazy because he has his computer, the old server that we run California on his computer. Um, we've talked about it for him to run with me, um, or I dispatch and he runs type thing. We talked about those things. He seems somewhat interested, but he just seems content on uh, basically watching what I do. Um, he's also can help me if I can teach him as far as some of the locals. I print out switch lists ahead of time, uh, printer at work, whatever. Uh, Print out a few pages of the switch list earlier in the week for the weekend, and then just basically teach him that and get him into operations and see if he's interested in doing that. He seems interested in switching. He loves doing that kind of thing. So he's more inclined to the switching side of things. I think he loves the complexity of the line. It's not open desert where you're just running on a main line. You're not seeing a lot of interaction. So it's hard to say with him what. And I asked him that, and I kind of, he just said that he likes it. It looks more like a city. It looks more it looks more realistic to him, even though, I mean, he's been across Canada, so he's across the prairies and everything. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I'm not going to argue or try to argue. I'm not going to try to downplay if he does have any enthusiasm, because I'm just going to ride on it and say okay, and I keep on, saying, yeah, I plan on doing this on the weekend. You good with that? Yeah, I want to do that, and we'll do it. And I said, we're gonna run sessions. I says, yeah, we can do an impromptu thing where we're setting things up like we did last week, and we did 2 videos last week. But I told him, I says, if you're serious about running sessions on the weekends, that you want to schedule these things in advance. So you and I have to plan it well in it. Says, I see him Tuesdays and Thursdays. By at least by Thursday at the latest, we have to have it posted. I'll see. I'm not worried about this weekend for sure, because I'm not going to be. I want to make sure everything's so. But I'm not too worried about the connections with the rest of the lines, though. Getting back to the whole bubble, because there's still so much of this that's not going to be used. But I did want to mention about the Amtraks, and this was the idea I had. I was gonna elaborate on this, and it has more to do with scheduling. Um, because of the way it randomly just picks trains out of the blue, which could or may not be realistic. A lot of manifests, they'll run at different times regardless and all that, but generally speaking, it's not very prototypical. Even you have random variances and you have all kinds of lateness, but to have just to pick a train and then throw it back into the bingo ball and then pick it again later and all that other garbage. Random number generator, as I've said all along, is flawed as it is. But that being said, I could easily put in a bunch of passenger trains and put in the probability to match the number of passenger trains, which I may do, which I probably will do actually. Start out, I'm going to look at the Amtrak schedule and um, see what actually comes in and out, and set it up that way, at least to start, just so that I can get some passenger traffic uh, in and out of LA Union and points beyond. But the idea that I had was I needed some type of audio feedback that notifies me that a train needs to be spawned. I could ease now when you get into these higher density lines, spawning stuff on schedule becomes a burden. And since Run8 at some point plans on putting it in, I'm not that concerned with it. But I thought about that, and if I find the passenger schedules are a little bit off or goofy, or um, I may write a small little routine that gives me an audible station announcement, 10-minute warning that so and so train is about to leave the platform, so and so LA station or wherever. That'll just play a MIDI file and patch them to whatever I have to file, but WAV file, or patch it all together and just run it in the background, have it linked up to whatever the clock is. That way, either they'll run on a schedule or they may have a lateness variance that's proper, a true random variance. And they do that, but it's not a top priority. It's just something I was thinking of today. Would cool. Um, so getting to the locals, how I'm planning on doing things. First of all, I've already mentioned about Hobart. Hobart's pretty straightforward. There's a 5 hour cycle on all trains that's going in. I don't think I have it set up for domestic. I have it set up. The internationals all go into down to Long Beach. Now I know there are some in reality, in real life, that there are some international containers that do go to Hobart. The problem is Run8, because as Ski was mentioning last night, because each car is set up for the containers and does that whole thing, it's difficult, if not impossible, to do it even with mix. I don't bother with the mixed intermodals. So what I do is I have it set up so that the Long Beach trains are the ones that are the international containers. The Q trains are your regular intermodal, domestic, I should say, not the intermodal. So that's your intermodal is the ones that go to Long Beach. Those are the ones that have the all the international stuff. The domestics are the ones that actually go to Hobart, as well as the Z trains. They also go to Hobart. I think they're all Z trains are the intermodal. Actually, they're the intermodal because they're the ones that are actually the trailer train. I don't think I have the combination of container slash trailers, the mixed ones. I don't think I have any mixed spawns right now. I could easily add them in, but just for simplicity, I'm just going to keep them out for now. And because Run8 does it a little bit differently and it doesn't really, if it complicates things just to make it look good, it's not worth it. For now, I'm just going to do it that way. And they just basically, they go into whatever ramps that are available that can handle it. Some of the ramps require a set off, which means you have to take player control of the train prior to entering the yard limits. You can't just run it in. If you run it in, you risk starting the timer. I think we saw that happen with one of Ski's trains when it was coming up. There was a few cars that didn't, kind of weird, and my suspect was that the cars were sitting in between the tracks, so they probably got moved forward and then went back on their own timer or something. Or if they're split, then they, the one industry goes there, one does the other. So I don't know for sure, but uh, so there's a few yard tracks as well. You don't have enough to make an outbound train, or if it seems too small, you just take it out of the ramps, you throw it into the yard, and then you just keep on building it up until you have an outbound train, and then enough for what you think is a meaningful outbound train, and then send it whenever. Bring the power back and forth to the Eastern Avenue. To turn whatever you have to turn, that's fine too. But turn or set up, whatever. But no, that's pretty much it. And it runs on a 5 hour, and you just keep an eye on things, and when I was watching last night as I was running, there was some that were going to be ready in an hour, some were going to be ready in 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through, and you just get the hang of it and flows through. You time your inbounds, you set up your outbounds, you watch out for the passengers, all that other stuff. But that's the intermodal side of things. Yes, there's more intermodals. There's UP has intermodals. There's City of Industry, I think. There's different ones. for now, I'm just going to keep it simple and do that. So I'm just going to model the San Bernardino sub into the corridor, as well as the track coming out of Union. So it's not going to model the, well, I'll see. I mean, I don't mind running for the sake of running a train. I suppose. I mean, running a train that you, I don't know what use, but anyway, I know that they mentioned it things, but whatever. I mean, all the passenger trains, I don't mind spawning all of them. That's fine by me, and then having them spawn in or whatever. But I'm not too concerned about UP, just basically because then I have to get into the um, side. I know UP comes out of the corridor too. That I was thinking about that. Thought, well, maybe I can just have the UPs that come in and out of the corridor spawn back and forth. There is a spawn point in East LA Yard, spawn point at West Taylor. There's a spawn point at CP Pico Rivera. There's also a spawn point at Streeter Siding, which I have no intentions of using. Really, I don't see the point of having. I mean, I can really, if I wanted to, I wouldn't bother with Streeter, but I could easily do peak. I was originally thinking about this. If I was going to bring UP in, I would bring UP inbound to LA via CP Pico Rivera. I would take Alhambra sub as the outbound passage, and it would be very boring. So even all the UP, if I start adding the UP, it's not going to be. It's going to be directional running, and directional running is very efficient yet boring. It's kind of like double track main lines that are over capacity, kind of like the Northeast. There's not much using the crossovers. There's not much interaction with junctions. Um, that's not to say San Bernardino doesn't have its boring sections, I suppose, as well. I haven't really run it too much, so um, you know, it is going to be what it is, I suppose. Um, but I'm hoping to have enough interaction with passengers and slower manifests and other types of trains to make it somewhat interesting. Hopefully, there'll be crossovers, stuff like that. But we'll see how it goes. It's the tracks I think are complex enough. Add in UP later on. We'll see how it goes. But like I said, I'm not a huge fan of double track layouts, but just because it represents well for the capacity. Now the manifests, um, again, what skis, I like his approach of he's got the research that he's done on the lac bar, or the bar lac bar, I guess it is, and the yards that they service. The support yards are going to have a turnover set in so that um, within the yard tracks, they will have a fake industry set up so that when the cars are set off, a timer will begin to run on them. If they don't get switched within a certain amount of time, and it could be a 24-hour time, I'm not sure. I'll probably do it 18 as well. But they either get switched out within 18 hours of arrival, as in put into a local and run the industry, or they get turned around. So loads become empties, empties become loads, and now what was a set out for a manifest train becomes a pickup for the next train going the other way. So that gives, despite the fact it's essentially the same train, uh, gives a purpose for that train. If one yard decides to do its switching or happens to do some switching, or then maybe not all the switching but some of it, or whatever the case may be, then that's fine. The rest can sit in the yard and do whatever, and then um, whatever cars are ready to go and the others don't, doesn't really matter, as long as there's something, and this should assure that there's something, or the possibility of running various locals, and there's a lot of switchers that run out of these yards. So I think there's well more than enough switching possibilities for the number of people that are really interested in switchers. I think my son ranks high among the people who are interested in switching this line, who server, it's the save file server up. I think that's about it. Think of anything else. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. 33. Probably gonna get a quick drink and check a few things out and then head to bed. Tomorrow I will do the live stream. I will go back to the last save and start running it. My son said that last time I did bring trains into Hobart, I actually already started unloading them. Traffic was a little lower than I wanted, but I also had spawns coming out of Hobart, so I'm going to move the spawns from Hobart, so we should be getting more traffic coming in from Long Beach as well as Riverside, possibly San Diego and the passenger too. But I'll add some more passengers. I'll just to spice things up, because it was actually an interest. It kept you on your toes when those trains came in, and um they made things really interesting. They really trying to remember if I had, yeah, I had some trains that were stopped because, or at least slightly delayed. I had other trains meet. It wasn't too bad, but then again, I was really Hobart was really backed up. I think I think it's got a lot of potential. Uh, if it doesn't work, I always got, always go back. The save file's still there. I can always go back to Mojave at some point. I'm sure I'll run the mountains again at some point. Um, I haven't been doing much with the other lines, to be honest. I just haven't had any interest to run the other routes. I'm more interested in running a system, getting it going, and um, certainly, running with Ski or running with others on certain nights, it's helped as well to give me ideas and to run with others. This is this is the kind of thing that feeds the creative juice. But yeah, I think that's it then. You guys got no more questions? I wanna end this for now. So I just, yeah. So yeah, I'll end that for now, and we'll see how it goes. As far as future purchases for me, um, the one thing I do want to get at some point in the near future is probably the well car pack. I don't have it. Really becoming an eyesore for me to see the box cars. I could filter them out, but I don't, because I want to keep them in there for others to see. But that should be the only one that I can think of. I have no intentions of, and I have not no not only do I have no intentions, but I have no desires of buying any more California upgrades. This was the one upgrade that I was eventually wanting to get anyways, because it really creates a strategic endpoint. Um, but this whole expansion thing getting too crazy. Just way too much expansion. Right? And I don't care how big of a server you got, you're not gonna have enough people to run it. I don't care how much AI you have or not having run at full capacity happen. you need smaller areas. This is why I'm starting with the smaller areas, and I see this as a good start. And there's a we're not going to have enough people to run the locals, but at least we have a turn mechanism. I think we're within our means. We're not doing the UP, and for the time being, I'll add UP in when it gets interesting, or to make it interesting, or add it later on. But so okay, I think that's it. I'm a little tired tonight, so I wasn't as clear as I was thinking earlier today. Definitely, it's been okay, guys. End it for now, and I will be back with no session. I'm just going to do some testing tomorrow. I'll go live stream at some point, maybe around 6 p.m., something like that. We'll see how it goes. Take it from there. Alrighty, so have a good one. We'll talk to you later.